Alright, today we're going to be talking about 9-4, which is about solving radical equations. So a radical equation is an equation that contains a variable within the radical. So it's inside a radical. And the other vocab word is an extraneous solution. And so that is a solution that does not satisfy the equation. So with these, you have to check, because technically I can solve and get an answer, but when I go to plug that answer back in for my variable, it actually does not work. And that is when it's an extraneous solution. So you may have been able to solve for the variable, but that solution actually does not work. It does not satisfy it. So I know you guys always ask me, well, do we have to check? For these ones, you 100% have to check, or you risk being wrong. So check your work, please. All right, so to do this, we treat it as if it's any other one-step, two-step, multi-step equation, and we use the inverse operation. So the inverse of adding would be to subtract. The inverse of multiplying would be to divide. I'm going to make this arrow go either way because it's vice versa. So then I want you to think now, what is the opposite of a square root? So just to remind you, because we have this problem almost every time we talk about these, a square root is a number inside the radical. So how do you undo that? What do you have to do? Go ahead and pause this, find someone next to you, and discuss this. And discuss this only. We're not discussing everything. Just discuss how would you undo a square root. So go ahead and pause this. Take about 10 seconds. So you should have come back and said that to undo a square root, all you simply do is square it. So, for example, if I have the square root of 2, to undo that, I'm just going to square it or multiply it by itself. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is technically the square root of 4, which then just gives me 2. If I square this, all that means is whatever's inside of it, that's what it's now equal to. So, down here, the original problem was the square root of d divided by 2 equals 8. Just so you can see that. And so to undo it, because it was a square root, I squared both sides. So when I square this, that leaves me with just d over 2. And whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other. So I also squared 8, and I got 64. Now I have d divided by 2 equals 64. So to undo division, I would multiply both sides times 2. That leaves me with just d on this side, because this cancels out. 64 times 2 equals 128, so I have d equals 128. Now I have to check. You have to do this step. Please don't make me say this over and over and over again. I will, but I really don't want to. You have to check. So we're going to plug 128 back in for d. So I have the square root of 128 divided by 2. I would do what's inside my square root first because I follow the order of operations. 128 divided by 2 is 64. So the square root of 64 is 8. 8 equals 8, so this is a solution, and this works. Alright, b. I have a square root of n minus 15 divided by 6 equals negative 2. So just like when we're dealing with two-step equations, we always get rid of what is not with the variable first. So technically, since my variable is inside my radical and that 2 is not, or that 6 is not, I'm going to get rid of my 6 first. So that's a division problem. So to undo division, I am going to multiply. So now I have, this cancels. I have n, square root of n minus 15 equals negative 2 times 6, which would be negative 12. Now I want to get rid of my square root sign. So I'm going to square everything. Square this and square this. So now I have n minus 15 equals negative 12 squared would be positive 144. To get my n alone, this is a subtraction problem. Opposite of subtraction is addition. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. That gives me n equals 144 plus 15. 4 plus 5 is 9. 4 plus 1 is 1. Sorry, 4 plus 1 is 5. 1 plus 0 is, so now we have n equals 159. Now we want to go through and check. Again, you have to check. You have to. Just get over it now. you have to check. So we're going to plug that back in for n. So that means I have the square root of 159 minus 15 over 6 equals negative 2. So 159 minus 15 is the square root of 144 over 6, which equals negative 2. Square root of 144 is 12. And so now I have 12 divided by 6 equals negative 2. Going to zoom in a little bit so you can see where I'm at. So now I'm going to do 12 divided by 6, which is 2. And when I get to the end, it says 2 equals negative 2. And we all know that is not true. So this is what we would call an extraneous solution. We found what x or n equals, but it does not work. It does not satisfy my equation. So it is actually not true. So since it does not work, what you would put, as we all know, is no solution or NA, one of those two. That's fine. But it does not work. It's an extraneous solution. We found an answer, but that answer does not satisfy the equation, so it is wrong. All right, go ahead and flip this over. I want you, well, if you could see it, I want you to pause this and do C and D alone, both C and D. So go ahead and pause this and do some math. All right, for C, again, we treat it the same way where we want to get the variable alone, but we always get rid of what's not with the variable first. So technically, you want to get the radical alone first, always, if you can. And so I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Now we're left with just the radical sign, so we are going to square it to get rid of it. So that leaves us with 3r plus 24 equals 3 squared, which is 9. Do not forget to square both sides, or it's going to mess you up. So you should have 3 plus 24 equals 9, and then treat it like a two-step equation. Subtract 24 from both sides. 24 minus 24 cancels, and then 9 minus 24 equals negative 15. Now you have 3r equals negative 15. You divide both sides by 3, and you get r equals negative 5. Again, you need to check. So you'll take that negative 5, you'll plug it back in. You do 4 times the square root of 3 times negative 5 plus 24. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Negative 15 plus 24 is 9. So now you have 4 times the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12. So that works, and r equals negative 5 is your solution. On D, again, we want to get the radical alone first. So we would subtract 5 on both sides, get square root of a plus 3 equals negative 4. We would square both. Get a plus 3 equals 16. And then subtract 3 on both sides. A equals 13. And then we go through, we plug it back in. We do 5 plus the square root of 13 plus 3 equals 1. 13 plus 3 is 16. Square root of 16 is 4. 5 plus 4 is 9. 9 does not equal 1. So that is a no solution. You could also put NA, you could put an empty solution set. So those are these things, the 2 empty braces to show that there's no solution. Put the 0 with the line through it. You guys know the deal. We have many ways you can say no solution. As long as you say no solution, you can't tell me 0, because then I take that your answer is 0, and that's wrong. So find some way to do no solution, and please do not forget to check your work. Alright, your favorite word problem. The skid to stop formula is, so this is like, if the skid to stop formula is S equals 30 times, or sorry, the square root of 30 times D times F. That relates the speed, so S is speed, and miles per hour to distance, which is the letter D, and feet, and to drag factor, which is F. So this is whenever you're like seeing how far you would skid before you stop, if you are trying to burn out. Anyways, so we take the information given. You are not going to be expected to memorize this formula. This is going to be given. This is just a specific problem. There's one similar to it on your homework. Again, this is not something you're going to have to memorize. Some of you may apply it in your real world life, but it's not something we have to know. So we plug in the information we have. If a car travels 70 miles per hour and skids 500 feet, what is the drag factor of the road? And we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So we plug in what we know. Again, it's S equals the square root of 30 times D times F, where S is speed, D is distance, and F is drag factor. So we know our speed, it's 70 miles per hour. It equals the square root of 30 times the distance that they skid was 500 feet. And we don't know what the drag factor is. That's what we're trying to figure out. So now we solve for the variable. We would have 70 equals 30 times 500, which 30 times 5 is 15, and then there's 3 zeros. So it'd be 70 equals 15,000 F. And then from here, we are going to try to get our get rid of our radical. So we're going to square everything. 70 times 70 is 4,900, and that would equal 15,000 F. And then we're solving for F. So we would just divide both sides by 15,000. And again, that's 1,500. Again, you can use your calculator. 4,900 divided by 15,000 would be 0.326 repeating, and that equals F. It says round it to the nearest tenth, so I'm going to look at my tenths place. Look behind it, it's a 2. That means the drag factor of this road is 3/10. Alright, so this is the end of 9.4. Please remember to go back and check and make sure it's not an extraneous solution and that it actually works. And we always want to try to get the radical alone first, so get rid of whatever's outside of the radical, and then square it, and then get rid of whatever's not with your variable, and then solve for your variable. But again, do not forget to check. Alright, that's the end of it.